Yeah, when this comes on, yeah, we're both gonna be okay. Feeling good. Hey everybody, welcome to the show tonight. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I've got let me turn the music down a little bit here. I've got a dear friend with me, Mr. Cody Wood, and tonight we're gonna talk about some of his travels to Mexico and Africa, and we've got a great show in store. We're having too much fun. We've spent the last hour and a half trying to rig together our set so we can fit in here, and the lights and the cameras, and if we move, we might knock over everything. So just bear with us. But let me bring my friend Cody Wood on here. My friend, let me turn off this. Just bear with me a little bit here. I got my phone on. We got everything running. All right, there. I think we're good to go, folks. Welcome to Mad Talks. Tonight, I've got my friend Cody Wood. We've been friends for decades, and I always learn something new from this guy. He's always he's a brother in Christ. He encourages me, and we have a lot of fun together. So tonight we're going to talk about travels to Mexico, travels to Africa, sharing the gospel with people, and things that we've learned, danger and miracles, and how God worked there. So, Mr. Wood, thank you for joining me tonight. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great.
Great. Let me ask you, when did you first go to Mexico? You know, what was the time frame? How old were you? And what was the purpose of your traveling there?
I'll have to back up a little bit to lay the groundwork. I grew up in a non-denominational Baptist-like evangelical church, and thanks to his own travels to South Africa, we've cracked up the hookah tonight.
We've got the hookah tonight.
See us,
yeah. In the mood of Africa, as an homage, we've got the hookah out. I bought this when I got home from Africa.
Walking through the smoke.
We're smoking vanilla hookah tonight, and it's very nice, very smooth.
Today's smoking, it's really vape. It's like it's like original organic vape.
It is, and it's very smooth, it's very cool, and it tastes great. So that's why we got the hookah out tonight. It's kind of take us back to Africa. But sorry.
So like I said, I grew up in this evangelical church that was very committed to missions. We had I don't know how many missionaries we supported, but as often every year we would have a missions conference, and we'd bring home as many missionaries as we could. And we would have like a flag parade of all the nations that were represented by our missionaries. So it was a big deal. It was part of our culture.
Yeah.
And one of the missionaries we represented was a native-born Mexican from Monterrey, Mexico, that had his own Baptist church down there. So he was a Mexican converting, saving whatever Mexicans. Which if you know anything culturally about Mexico, it's the vast majority are Catholics. So for him, it was converting Catholics. And then he also had missions in the mountains that would be, his argument was, whoever gets there first is what they're going to be. So that guy came and visited my church. And I had met him before, in years past when he would visit. But I was in 8th grade, I think. And yeah, that's right. And I had just had my first year of Spanish 1.
Okay.
And we had him over to our house as one of his hosts that visit.
You knew how to say "Donde es la biblioteca?"
Yeah.
Very helpful.
And we just really got on really well. And I was 14 during that visit.
Yeah.
And he had his family with him, and we just really kind of hit it off. And he's like, "Cody, you should come visit me in Mexico." Well, the following summer I did, which was to think back on it. What a gift from my parents! What a stretch for them! I had just turned 15.
Yeah.
And they were putting me on a plane. I've never flown before.
No cell phones.
No cell phones.
No
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an analog world. I mean, there was no internet.
Right.
And this would have been 1991, so you can do the math.
Yeah.
But summer of 91, they're putting their 15-year-old on a plane by himself.
Yeah.
Never flown before, to go to a foreign country. If if you know me today, but especially if you knew me at 15, no surprises here. When I got to Monterrey, I could not find my luggage. And there was a guy on my airline who was from Brazil, so he speaks Portuguese.
Yeah.
And what a fun little. My wife and I, and by now you know, like it's always we always have misadventures when you're with me. And so this guy, I get to see this guy speak Portuguese to someone at the airline. He's speaking Spanish back, and they found my luggage for me.
Okay, great.
And so yeah, I was 15. The first time I went to Monterrey, Mexico. That's where he lived, right in the city, and spent.
What were you guys doing there? How were you fitting into the puzzle?
Yeah. So I mean, he basically said to, my parents, my church, me, come down and I'll put you to work.
Okay.
So I mean, I'll find something. I was there for I don't remember exactly how long now, but it was several weeks. It was a nice chunk of a summer.
Wow.
And so, I had a room of my own, his place.
See, I want an experience like this. I practice Spanish with Duolingo, but I'm never going to be fluent. Like I say, like lock me in a Mexican prison. So I can
I don't know where you want to go to study.
I know that, but you know what I'm saying. Anywhere you go down there, well, not everywhere you go down there, but when I've been down there, I've been with people who speak English, and they'll like speak English to me. It's like, no, I don't want that. Like,
sure. Well, sincerely, I mean, I have a lot of people in my parish that if you want to practice, we have classes. But to your point, I learned more in those weeks than I had the whole year.
Yeah,
because I went there having finished Spanish 1.
Yeah,
and I came back to Spanish 2 already, in advance.
Oh yeah,
sure. And I mean, all of the Spanish that I'm told regularly by Spanish speakers that I speak well, and what they mean is I sound well. It's not that that I'm fluent, but that I sound really well. And that was all that trip.
I'm sure.
All of 15. Just absorbing that. And Ramon was his name. Ramon Hernandez was the guy that I was staying with, and he would sit me down and school me. If you know, again, Spanish culture, Mexican, well, Latin American culture, you have more than 3 squares a day. You end up having a supper late at night. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we would just sit there, and he would no. On the specifics of pronunciation.
That'd be awesome. I would love that. Well, what did you find? I mean, as a 15-year-old without the internet, without YouTube, going to Mexico, what did you find surprising about the culture there? Because you're not hanging out in the posh areas of Mexico City.
No.
You're in the mountains. You're in villages.
So what my time was spent in the city.
Oh, okay. In Monterrey.
Yeah. That's a great question. And then we spent a week in the mountains.
Okay.
So that's a whole story unto itself of like outfitting this pickup truck.
Yeah.
There was a team of youth that we took up into the mountains to do VBS.
Okay.
And Vacation Bible School, if you're not up with the lingo out there on the interwebs. But
we lost your camera. How do I kick this guy back on? Press the stop button.
Yep.
Where is the stop button?
To the right of the viewfinder. There you go.
Camera back on.
Well, I don't see me yet.
There it is.
Okay. Sorry,
that's
probably going to happen again.
Multiple times.
We're working with new tech tonight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a story into itself of how we had to outfit this pickup truck that was.
And like, what was your experience?
You asked me what was most surprising, and all I was trying to say was that I had spent the bulk of my time in the city and then a week out in the mountains. We drove 3 hours out of the city, and then 3 hours more up into the mountains, and then from what was called La Planta, that was a church plant, but it was also like the base of operations. From there, we loaded up donkeys and hiked the rest of the day into the mountains to a village.
What an experience.
What was most surprising? Lots of things. I mean, I do think I'm very much wired for international travel in the sense that because I've taken groups since then, revisited Mexico for extended trip like that twice since then, and had the opportunity to take other people's children to places around the world. And I think the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody, beyond all the practicals of vaccinations and what to pack and blah blah blah, is expectations. Leave them home.
Yeah.
If you just can let go, because that's what's going to get you angry, sad, frustrated. If you can just say, whatever comes, be prepared. I'm okay with it. Right. And I am very much wired that way. I mean, it's a feature of my personality. So, it has, I'm not trying to sell that as a virtue. It's got its pluses and minuses.
Sure.
But it's very good for international travel.
Yeah. But when people look on Instagram or whatever, and they got this beautiful idea, and I've made this plan that's going to go perfectly. I'm going to do all this stuff, and I'm going to love all the food. And then you get there anywhere, whether you're in Mexico or Italy or you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You really got to be open to, I'm going to go experience this culture, and I'm going to find what's beautiful about it. And I'm going to understand the differences that are not going to be very pleasant. Let me just throw this out there. When we went to Milan, Italy, the fashion capital of the world, beautiful city, my wife goes into a public restroom and there's no toilet seats. Okay? No bloody toilet seats. Woman, like my wife was like, what? So,
that makes me think about it. That's a little good.
Yeah, you got that kind of stuff that happens. You just got to be ready just to understand, like,
also to that point, I mean, on that same point, there are plenty of places in Mexico that you can't flush.
Yeah, you throw it in the bin next to you. And it's toilet seats on the toilets too, right? I mean,
not in my experience, but
I've been places where there's no toilet seat. Yeah. It's just the bare toilet bowl, and it's like,
So there are so many little, because those are little things. Yeah. In my world, those are little things, but they're not insignificant things. Right. Especially if you go expecting it to be the same. I mean, I'm going on a trip with a team of mostly kids, and we were in Mexico and complaining about the air conditioning in the hotel, and it's just sort of fair, but I just think to go elsewhere and expect it to be like where you're from.
That's why we're traveling to different places.
Right.
It's different,
And
just appreciate it.
That, again, one of the things we've done over the years is backpacking, and the whole point that I don't go out into the wilderness to be comfortable, and I don't travel internationally to be comfortable either. Right.
It's a new experience. It's to stretch yourself, and no matter what difficulty or whatever happens, every trip I've been on, there's been some difficulty. My luggage didn't make it. I missed the train. My airline is delayed. Whatever. You just got to learn to this is life.
Yeah.
It's not going to ruin.
Unless you're going to Western Europe or Canada or something like this. Speaking as someone from the U.S.
Yeah.
It's going to be different, and it's going to be different in those particularly technological, comfort-based creature comfort ways.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're not already expecting to rough it a little bit in that regard, and that you don't know the ways that that's going to show up until it does.
Right.
So I would say one thing that surprised me very much, because I grew up in a very small town, 1,300 people, and it's only shrunk a little bit since then. And so, I had visited cities. I'd been to Buffalo, New York. But to Monterrey, what surprised me was, I always thought and having traveled elsewhere internationally since then, this is pretty standard, is that wealth and poverty are right next to each other.
Yeah.
I thought it would be over on this end of town is all the, and then over here you travel miles away, and then here's the poor side of town, and it's like, no, here's Wells with walls, and
Right.
and then right next to it is Jack.
Yep.
That really shocked me. I mean, I'm not saying like it was a crisis. It was just surprised me.
Yeah,
It was not at all what I expected. So that was one big thing. There were lots of surprises. Number of cockroaches. It's just something that, okay, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
We would drink. We had the little glass bottles of pop, and which is great, by the way. If you can ever, especially if you worked all day in the sun in Mexico, if you can ever have a Coke in Mexico, you can now buy them here in the grocery store. Mexican Coke.
Yeah.
But they make it with cane sugar instead of corn syrup, and it's Coke.
Yeah.
But it's like the best Coke you've ever had. If it's 115 and you were sweating, and then somebody hands you a glass bottle of cold.
Yeah. Let me say something on that. I've told you this before. I hate when I travel and no matter where I go, it's the same. I'm talking like the U.S. Okay, it's the same strip mall that I've got right down the street. Yeah. When I was a kid, we would travel all over the U.S. and it was always something unique, and I love that about it. Like, oh my goodness, they do it this way here, and they've got this special restaurant there. And now when I travel, there's a Staples, there's a Best Buy, there's a Olive Garden, there's a Longhorn. You know what I mean? And it's like, I didn't travel to have the same thing I've got a mile away. That drives me nuts. And when I was in Mexico, my wife was like, man, if you can find some Mexican vanilla and bring it home, I'd love that. Okay. Well, actually, let me take that back. She didn't say that. When I was a kid, we went to Mexico and my mom brought back all this Mexican vanilla and it was so good. It was just the best vanilla. Okay. And so I thought, I'm going to bring some of this back for my wife. I got to find some. So I told Hugo, who was my driver, I was like, listen, buddy, before I get on this plane, I got to get this Mexican vanilla. Okay. I want to get it for my wife. Okay. So we went to all these little stores, no vanilla. He takes me to Walmart. And I was like, I don't want to go to Walmart. Like this is the exact same store that we've got back here. This is in Mexico City. We go to Walmart. We go there. I find this Mexican vanilla. I buy it. Okay. I bring it home. I give it to my wife, and she goes, "Oh, thanks, hon." Opens the cabinet and sets it right next to the exact same bottle of Mexican vanilla that she ordered from Amazon. It's like, I don't know. I love it. I hate it.
I don't know if that's better.
I know. You can get like anything anywhere, and we've like diluted the uniqueness of the world.
Yes. It does get to culture.
So it's just like
the sort of,
I'm never bringing back Mexican vanilla.
Which, not to take a giant tangent, but when you think of those metaphors for America of e pluribus unum, whether it's like the phrase I grew up on until quite late they were shifting the metaphor before I got out of high school, but classically it was the melting pot, right?
Yeah.
And to recognize the mosaic is what they were trying to replace that with, and I think that's a big conversation on diversity, but absolutely, when you think of like I can get anything from anywhere, that's always been a boon. No matter you go back to the colonial times, right? And it was like, well, you're getting goods from Europe, and you always want that.
Yeah.
But when you think of pockets of culture, we are diluting.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's sad. Well, tell me a little bit about what you were doing there, and I want to ask you about because I don't know what your people's experience is, but I grew up in a lot of Protestant churches, and a lot of them had like, we're going to send the youth group down to Mexico to do mission work for these people down there. And if there's anything else you want to talk about your experience before we get to that part of it,
Sure.
Please share. But I do want to kind of explore this idea of like Americans going to Mexico to do mission work.
Okay.
But, tell me kind of a little bit more about your experience when you were 15.
Well, like I already said, just what a mom, dad. I don't know if you'll see this, but thank you so much.
Let me pause. While you're thinking about that, folks, I've had some technical difficulties in the past with comments. Okay, I would love to take your questions. So on X, go ahead and you got to click on the video, and you'll see live chat at the bottom. Okay, Go ahead and you can type your questions there. Don't comment on the post. Comment on the video. Click into the video. Live chat at the bottom. If you're on a PC, it's going to be over the right-hand side. And you can put your questions there. And if you type your question and I don't put it up on the screen, then it's not going through. I don't know why. It's a bug from X, okay? So if that happens, refresh the video, refresh the post, okay? Go out of it, go back into it, and try again. I promise I'll put your questions on. I really, really want to have your questions for this great conversation with my friend Cody Wood. So please continue.
Yeah. To try to sum up in a nutshell, we kind of had a preliminary conversation about what we were going to talk about, I think, last week, and we were concerned, let's not run out of steam here having the talk before the talk. But one thing that I brought up was, like, it took me a while to figure out that what I love about Pittsburgh and Cleveland is precisely what most people don't like about Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
Yeah.
And it's the same when I go to Mexico or elsewhere. I like texture. I like roughness and grit.
Yeah.
And
being close to the land.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So, yes. Less artificial, a little more substantial. And there's that in Mexico. So this is not a slam. It's a little dirtier.
Yeah,
that's not a problem to me. It's largely a desert country. It's dustier. It's more rugged. I like that word. Right. And that's what when I'm looking for an adventure, I don't want polished and soft and smooth and it delivered. To give you an idea, like I said, we loaded up these donkeys. I'm 15 years old, a 15-year-old boy with these other Mexican teenagers, and we're loading up donkeys, and it's like straight out of the Looney Tunes cartoon of, like, the stuff on the back of the donkey is bigger than the donkey, and I'm not kidding. It's like they're netting it up. It's like, I mean, when they say a pack animal, they're not kidding. And when here we are, and we've been backpacking, like, I'm not kidding. Like, there were points for the trail, the donkey has to put one foot in front of the other. You're on a little, and we're in mountains, people. If you've ever seen the Sierra Madres, like, and when the donkey wants to take a break, it's taking a break. When they say stubborn as a mule, like, I mean, Ramon was smacking this things behind, like, going, it's just, I'm taking a break.
How often would it do that? I'm like, for how long?
Like, it was not very long, but minutes. You're waiting for it. It's not like you're just continuing to walk. So it took a while. Like I said, 3-hour drive up in there, and then 3 more hours hike like this with pack animals to get to the next. And then that same evening, I mean, it was just running on the excitement of this experience. That same evening, Julie, if you're out there, hi. Everyone else kind of settled in, and Chewy and I ran around on these trails up there. I don't know how. I mean, I guess I've been there enough times to know where to go. I'm just running behind Chewy, like, we're bouncing off these paths and roots, and running through to the next village. The next village was just a cluster of 3 or 4 houses in the exactly what you might imagine.
Like a village was like 3 or 4 houses.
Yes, a little cluster of. Well, the mountains are rugged enough that that's all you would fit there.
Okay.
It's like, here's enough of a level-ish bowl in the mountains.
And we're not putting 3-car garage with
we're talking about drywall. Largely mud. And log homes with tin roofs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
did they have satellite dishes?
They did not have electricity. One place had electricity. To say electricity, they had a car battery. And they were running stuff off the car battery.
When I went to Monument Valley in the American West when I was a kid, it's on an Indian reservation, and we saw all these mud huts, and they all had satellite dishes.
Oh, no. No, most of them didn't have electricity. Yeah. So, again, to think about it, we're 3-hour drive out of the city, 3-hour drive into the mountains, and then another hike. So we're that far away from light pollution.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be awesome. And when you have temperatures that are, somewhere around 100 in the day, dropping down to the high 40s at night. It feels freezing cold.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really freezing, but it feels so cold.
Yeah.
But it's so clear, and you're seeing a shooting star all the time.
Wow.
It was. I mean, again, a 15-year-old romantic like me couldn't have asked for more. You know, I mean, it's just so amazing. And so
you're a unique individual now, and I'm sure at 15 you were the weirdo. You know, like go out there and to appreciate it and enjoy it. That's awesome.
It was. I mean, my heart was full.
That's awesome.
And you know, experiences like so again, dating myself. You know, MacGyver was on TV, and I loved it. And I had my Swiss Army knife. One day while we were there, asked me like, "Does anybody have a knife?" Oh, I mean, to give me a further idea, like again, there's no electricity, so you're seeing the stars like I told you. And you would head out. There was no toilets. You just went where you could find a place to go.
Yeah.
Not even an outhouse. You just
and hope you didn't step in where the other guy found a place
went
to
out
go.
into the woods and went to the bathroom.
Right.
And their water, like they had a hollowed out log that a mountain stream ran into. That was so. You know, in the morning, go up over this ridge to this log, and you know, I think of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs,
You know, plunge and scrub kind of.
Right.
And it was refreshing. It woke you up. It was mountain stream.
We've been backpacking in the winter, and it reminds me of that. But I mean, we were doing it for 2 or 3 days,
Right.
not for long.
Yeah, this was
This
their
is their
reality. So there I was, like washing up, and they came asking, "Do you have a knife?" I hand them my Swiss Army knife that I think we might have gotten for that trip, and they brought it to me all covered in hair and blood. They killed and skinned a goat for us to make soup. So you talk about, you know, again that reality. Yeah, but I mean, tell me a soup that you're gonna have. Right, this is fresh meat. They just killed the meat.
Right. Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, oh my goodness. Without question. So, I mean, you talk about food. The best hamburger I've ever had in my life was on that trip, which is Mexican food, a hamburger.
Yeah.
So street vendor. They had a stand, and oh my goodness, they put so much. I mean, there was like fried ham on this hamburger, and peppers, and it was so good.
I haven't had.
And I took my brother there 18 years later. I was like, "You have to get a hamburger," and actually, Ramon helped me find the same street vendor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then the best, oh my goodness, best Mexican food was up in the mountains. Again, and now we talk about if you're backpacking, you hike all day through the mountain, everything, and then you find
your own fuel and build your own. By the time you sit down and make yourself some good food, it could be some kind of a pack that you shared apple in your we hiked like 20 miles at Shawnee.
We could not find the trail. It was at nighttime. We were hiking. It was winter. We had to cross the street. We couldn't find a trail. We were so exhausted. And Cody had this apple, and we're like, and we ate core, we ate everything. It was so good. We were dying.
If you don't like your food, you're hungrier. You know, I mean,
yeah, everything's okay.
But my goodness, I don't think it was just that sort of roughing it.
Genuinely.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the United States is getting better with closer to authentic Mexican food. But when you go to Mexico, you get spices and flavors, and just like up here, they're going to give you every menu. You can have the Speedy Gonzales, the tacos, and the fajitas, and that kind of thing. But down there, there's dishes that you're just what was it? I can't think of the name right now, but I was in Puebla, Mexico, and had a unique dish specific to that region, and it was like this green sauce on this chicken, and it was just like a flavor I've never had, and like nopales, which are cactus, and it's like a slimy green bean kind of thing, but it's a unique thing. You don't get that. I haven't seen that in places up here, but you know, when you go there, it's like a whole different palate. That's what I love, is the variety, and it's just part of the experience. But you got to be open to that. You can't go there expecting, Taco Bell or your favorite Mexican place back home and think like that's what Mexican food should be. You got to be open to, I'm going to experience life where these people do, and that is the fun, the travel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's
So you
this is in Monterrey that, like, on this you'll see people with giant cast iron cauldrons cooking everything that is part of an animal. Right. And Ramon did take us to some great restaurants. But here again, 15-year-old white boy from a tiny town in Pennsylvania. And I mean, the extent of it wasn't hard, to be honest, it wasn't very hard to impress me, but I was impressed. Sure. I was impressed.
Well, you had an experience that most people never, ever live up to in their life. So, I mean, that's like, hitting a home run your first time at bat.
Exactly. Exactly. I have that kind of experience at 15, and it wasn't just like a family vacation. I'm on an adventure. And, I mean, I remember one day we went over to some people's homes after church. We went to the house for lunch on Sunday, and they made tamales. I'd never had a tamale. Yeah. And they, in a corn husk. And I tried eating the corn husk. chewing, and then they were, here I am having Spanish one, right. And they're like, "What are you doing?" Just wrap. So that was a nice.
Still laughing up at
that gringo and that corn husk.
In my church, we have a nice Latino population. We had a morning commemorating the Virgin of Guadalupe, and I knew how to eat my tamales. I mean, again, that was over half my life ago.
I want to ask a question. Liberty Mom is watching. Hello, Liberty Mom. Thank you so much. You always tune in, and I really appreciate you. She asked, for both of you, what is the one non-negotiable item you must bring with you on your travels besides your phone and your toothbrush? So I'm going to let you answer that one first. I got to think about this a little bit. It's a very good question.
To say non-negotiable, hopefully we have time to get through my African travels, but
yeah,
I really, and David and I, as we've said, we go backpacking, and always the challenge is how little can I take?
Right.
And our first trip out, that was such a learning curve, such a fail, really, a good fail to go, okay, now we know what not to do.
Yeah.
And I have very much learned from backpacking that, you think, I want this to be comfortable in the woods. I'd like that. The lighter my pack is, the more comfortable and happy I am. So you really try to get down to essentials. So that being said, I really don't need a whole lot at all. But something that that first trip to Mexico when I was 15, a woman in my church, Sandy, if you're out there, thank you. She was a Spanish teacher and had been to Mexico more than once. And she gave me a tip that I have shared whenever I can and practice to this day is Pepto-Bismol tablets. I just take one every day when I'm traveling abroad. It doesn't matter how I feel. I just take them like a vitamin. Yeah. You got to drink plenty of water. You don't want to get constipated, but I've never had any stomach issues anywhere I've ever traveled. It just coats your stomach and you're good to go. So, you still have to be smart about what you're eating and not eating, especially what you're drinking and not. But
I took your advice for that. When I went to Mexico, I did that. I never got sick. I avoided the like water, wash and stuff like that. One thing I say is comfortable shoes. I walk miles and miles, over 10 miles a day when I travel to Europe or something like that. I'm not sightseeing. I always try to have very comfortable shoes. I bring moleskin in case I develop a blister on my toe. A blister on your toe will ruin your trip.
Yeah.
So if I feel one starting to form,
I've never heard of this. This is basically like tape for your skin. Like it's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's like it feels like a flannel or felt or something like that
on the inside.
Yeah,
it's like a Band-Aid on the outside.
Right. So I always take comfortable shoes. I always take moleskin, and I get very anxious if I don't have like things like planned out, like if we're going to do a plane or something like that. I always make very good itinerary, and I try to build in.
I really we've gone to New York City 3 times.
Yeah,
3 times together, and I think we're great company. I mean, because he's got the itinerary. I'm more of fly by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
Between us, we usually have a good time.
And you got to build in, and that's one thing you're saying. How much you bring, I would say, as a couple choosing that, have an itinerary, but have flexibility built in, because nothing is ever going to go 100% to your schedule. You got to have that just buffer built in, and just for the kid wants to stop in the gift shop. We want to take. Hey, we didn't realize we could climb the dome at this place, and we want to do that, or we want to get gelato. You got to have flexibility. So that's what it is for me. I always, like you said, I try to go light on the clothes, comfortable pants. If I was looking at the schedule or the forecast, it's gonna be warm, I'll throw in a pair of shorts or some pants and a light jacket that you can throw on, easily throw into a backpack. I always have a backpack you can throw in a jacket. Ladies can throw their shawls in for going into church or something. You can throw camera, or if you buy something at a gift shop, you can throw it into a backpack. So I always have a backpack. I always have a camera, phone, couple shoes.
I always think in terms of functionality more than form, and form's very important. But I don't think, to me, when I'm packing, everything has a job. So I'm gonna bring 2 things that do one job. I have this jacket for when it's like this. Yes, a shirt for when it's like that.
Yeah.
So to your shoes point, 100% agree. But if you're going to do a lot of walking, I also recommend more than one. It's nice to be able to switch. When you think of the Moleskine idea,
It's rubbing in one spot.
Exactly. And if I can just switch the shoes, that can help too.
Yep.
I have Tiva sandals that, they've got a nice even mouthhole tread on them, but depending on the weather and everything else, I kind of like wear my sandals as long as I can, and then maybe switch to some comfy sneakers or whatever.
Well, great question, Liberty Mom. Yeah, I'll let you tell us what you always bring, Liberty Mom. I'd like to hear from you and anybody else who got questions. But Cody, let's continue on. So let me ask you this, and please continue to share about your experience with the churches. But I was saying a lot of the Protestant churches, and you're now, so you can speak to that. But they often send youth groups to Mexico, and I've always wanted, we kind of talk like, kind of be a joke, like, okay, you're taking teenagers that know nothing about construction, and you're sending them to Mexico, and a lot of the tradespeople we have up here are Mexican, so it seems like they have the skills down there. Why are we sending people that don't have skills down in Mexico to paint, or to build, to do something for these people? Is it worthwhile? Is it something we really should be doing? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to just answer it directly, is it worthwhile? How, why? You brought up a lot of different issues, and I think they're worth thinking about and reflecting on. Especially if you are one of those people taking that trip, leading that trip, or one of those kids considering sending your kids or whatever. It's definitely worth reflecting on what's going on here. The idea that you brought up the skilled labor, that's complicated. Some of it we could argue is, it's come here. I think it would be just way overly simplistic to think there's just somebody who knows how to sling a trowel everywhere you look in Mexico. Like everybody's a mason and bricklayer.
Right.
Or when you think of landscaping, for example, I have a very good friend right now who does. He's from Mexico and he does landscaping. But like I said, most of Mexico I've seen is quite desert. It's hard to grow grass there.
Yeah.
So to think, they all are grass grows, is just not accurate at all. So I'm going to refer to like a trip that I took specifically to. Does it feel like it's getting hot?
No,
we're eating. Okay.
Feels fine.
So one trip I took to Mexico was with a group of other people's kids. I didn't have kids yet, and which is crazy to think about. I think I was like maybe 26 years old or something. That all these people are trusting me with these, and I'm taking them to another country. I had Thankfully, a bunch of volunteers that helped me out. That was Ruiz, Mexico was the place. And we did actually, I think, at least 2 houses. We built brick houses. I'm pretty sure the entire teenage team had 0 masonry experience.
Right, for sure.
Now, we had locals there that were helping us with that. But to your point, like, are we helping them? Are we blessing them when we send teenagers down to build your house when they've never done anything like this before? So when I think of the actual blessing or benefit or help, some of it is just material, financial. We are supplying the brick. We are supplying the mortar.
Yeah.
Did they have the money to do that? No, they didn't.
Yeah.
And so we are giving them a better house in the end. Relative, you got to keep it in perspective. What were they living in before we built them this brick house? They were living in scrap metal, sheet metal place that they had constructed.
Yeah.
They're leaning this against that to keep the rain off. So, and then we have people who are skilled supervising us. And like, no,
these were Mexicans.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of them had been to, I had a great conversation with him. No joke. Here we are, and we're in our shorts, hopefully using sunscreen and stuff, staying hydrated. It's 115, and the sun is beating down on you. I mean, I can still, this was a memory from Monterrey, from a different place, but I can remember walking out of Ramon's church, and it's just like, I mean, it is a thermal wall.
Yeah.
Of like, dang, there's the heat right there.
Yeah. And then
you feel whatever that place is, that's not this. It's like hot.
Yeah.
And here we are, we're just ripping. And this guy, this local that's supervising, is in jeans. And I think we might have even been in a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
And he talked about, he had taken a walk up to Washington State. And he said, I would put on long underwear, a pair of jeans. And he's like, and I couldn't get warm. So there is a reality to being acclimated, for sure. But to your question of like, are we actually helping? So, there's that supervision that I think mostly the supply.
Okay.
And then when I think about travel and what's it good for, you brought up the Mark Twain quote. And I just think, personally, interpersonally, culturally, that whole human thing of,
For those that aren't familiar, the Mark Twain quote is basically, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, closed-mindedness. It just opens your mind to a whole wider perspective of how life can be done, how people live, how, you aren't necessarily right in all these things, and that there's just, ways to enjoy a life that are different.
Yeah. So when you think of a service trip, especially if it's because anybody can do one, let's call it humanitarian project.
Yeah.
But when you think of a service trip, especially in a sacred context, and I'll go one further, especially in a Christian context, I think we are so wired to think of it in terms of commodity that it's the wrong way to frame it. I've given commodity. We supply the brick, we supply the mortar. But when you think of experience and growth, certainly these kids are going to be served. And this gets to an idea that has come home to me so many times. It's sort of unavoidable that when I get ready for a trip like this, it's a missions trip. I think, I'm getting myself ready mentally, spiritually. It's not just about making sure my bag is packed right. I'm doing it prayerfully, usually with other people. Yeah. And you think like, you want to serve God, and I'm taking God there, and every time I always end up in this mind frame, and every time without fail, I find God's already there.
He doesn't need to ask.
And I'm the one that's ministered to.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that's served. The more I try to serve, I mean, I think this touches on what Jesus says when it's more blessed to give than receive.
Right.
Is you do receive by giving. Yeah. And how can this not be true when with the Christian concept of God is, first of all, community. Right? There's a Trinity. There's not. It is and without just going off on a Trinity tangent, that we can, as John says in his epistle, God is love. Okay, God is love in Himself, which would require more than one person,
Right.
And that I think we get it. We have a hard time getting past our own frameworks and paradigms, even when we have the statement right in front of us. Like, the disciples are arguing over who's the greatest, and who gets said he's gonna come to his throne. Who's gonna sit at his right? And he says, if you want to be great, be the servant of all.
Yeah.
The greatest of you will be the least, and the servant of all. Yeah. And I think we get that still a little off. I'll speak for myself. For the longest time, I think, without thinking about it, that I thought, well, if I serve now, and then I'll be great.
Then you'll be great.
Then He'll exalt me. I'll get it.
Right.
Then I'll get to sit in the throne.
Yeah.
The greatest position is the servant. That God, when expressing, Philippians 2, right? Jesus being in form equal with God, thought it not something, not robbery, not something to be grasped, but emptied Himself, took on the form of a servant, became obedient unto death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God is exalted and given Him a name above every name. So,
how appropriate for Holy Week.
Yes. But I think we got to be careful not to miss it. He's exalted. Okay. Good. Yes. Right. But one very accurate, good way of thinking of Jesus is the one who makes the Father known. How does He make the Father known? In part by being the Son. Only fathers have sons.
Yeah.
So He comes as Son, and then I think it's Philip, saying in the John discourse of the Last Supper, says, "Show us the Father." And every time I imagine Him face palming and saying, "Philip, how long I've been with you?
Yeah.
If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." So who is Jesus? He's the one who comes to make the Father known. Well, how does He make Him? By being a servant. Like it's very easy to think of God as supreme, as the King, but He's nothing without a servant. Like, why do I exist?
Yeah.
Like, where do I don't give myself my breaths or heartbeats.
Right. They're all gifts. I'm a gift. And I didn't make myself. Yes. Psalm 100 says, I love there's two translations. There's lots of translations, but two ways this is translated. And I like the old way is we are the sheep of His shepherd. It is He who made us, and not we ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. We didn't make us.
Right.
I didn't make me. So everything about me is a gift to me and hopefully to the world. But so God, God serves me with every breath. So to be great is to serve. That's all. It took all that to spit out.
Yeah.
You're already in the greatest position. So you're not sweeping the floor waiting to make it to the top. Sweeping the floor is the top. If you want to find, Matthew 25, if you want to find Jesus, you go to the least of these, right?
And
He's already there with.
I think this echoes what we talked about with travel. If you go there expecting it's going to be this way, all the great things that I already know and that I'm hoping to experience,
I go.
Then you go and you be a servant. You're like, I don't want to sweep this floor. These bricks are heavy. But if you can find the blessing in the different, in this vocation of being a servant, you know what I mean? Like that's where you really can be blessed by being the servant. You know what I mean? So for the youth group kid, all right, we are blessing the people in Mexico by giving them supplies that they maybe could not purchase for themselves. And we are providing labor. We are providing labor that they may or may not have.
That's right.
And they might supervise. And but the flip side of that is everything you're talking about is the person doing the service is getting this great blessing.
That's right.
If they will receive it.
Yes.
If they will, if their heart is open to it and they can appreciate it. You know what I mean?
They will grow. You just made me think of an unfortunate. It's not an unfortunate lesson, but a lesson that falls short. of what could be learned is something I'm sure you've heard too. Like growing up, people that are in the military, people that do anything like these kinds of trips, the idea of to come back and go, now you know how good you have it, which is a good lesson. It's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like to appreciate and be grateful. I like my air conditioning.
Sure.
I like my soft bed and my electricity. I mean, I just thought of another story in the mountains of rats overhead, but there's a lot. I like all that stuff, and so you travel, you rough it a little. But if you stop there, I think it's really sad. First of all, you're in this kind of superior position of, boy, I've got it good. Too bad for all those poor souls people, that's their every day.
Yeah.
It's a little icky.
If only we could transport America to them, right?
Yeah. And now I've lost my own idea of the, I'm trying to think of what I wanted to say about you can go further.
Well, I think it grows you.
Yes, exactly.
I don't need the cushy air conditioning.
Yes,
like I can exist. I can be stronger and live with this world.
Yeah, if you receive it, if all you're down there and the whole time is miserable, and what you've gained is gratitude for yourself at home,
right?
And I'm so glad to be back.
Yeah,
then you didn't get everything.
Right.
And to that point of who's helping who and whatnot, like hopefully you will be blessed, and change.
Yeah,
and not just
right.
But I would have to say, maybe they put up with some spoiled brats.
Yeah.
And wherever you're going.
Right.
And maybe they're not impressed.
Right.
But that I hope is in the same sort of complimentary way.
Yeah.
A growth for them too.
Sure.
That they can, something that's probably lost on a lot of American teenagers that take such a trip is how much they were served, how much they inconvenienced people there, how much they had to make space for you and food for you, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And I don't like this food. You were so served.
Yeah.
And that I've seen universally in my travels is what good host people are elsewhere. Fabulous.
I can't.
Hospitality is such a high written in their culture value. Right. I mean, I say their culture. Who they? Everywhere I've ever gone.
When I went to Mexico, when I went to Mexico, Hugo, who is a dear friend of mine now, I met him the first time, and he was my driver. I was here for a short trip for work. I went back for work, but I took vacation on top of it, and he was going to join me in going to Teotihuacan and some other places to sightsee. But he invited me to his house, and I cannot tell you the hospitality. He drove me 2 hours from my hotel to his house for his wife. We went to the market and picked out the spices and stuff for dinner, and I knew it was a sacrifice for them to have me as a guest, and what they were preparing for me and giving me was a stretch, I know. And I was so blessed for them to share their table with me and for their children. Like he says his grandchild on my lap, and I've got this picture, I cherish it. But they so much welcomed me into their house, made me welcome and comfortable, and spread out everything for me. And I commented they had some toys from McDonald's or something in their hut. And I was like, "Oh, this is from McDonald's." And he said, would you like it? Can we give it to you? Like they're trying to give me, from the little that they have. I was like, no, please. But the hospitality, it blew me away. I was like, if these people came here, we'd be like, enjoy your hotel tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. Like, I would never think invite them over to my house. Like,
this is a lost thing even in American culture locally.
Yeah.
Like growing up where and when I did, it saddens me. I'm not picking on anybody, but like where I live now, there's not nearly enough just inviting somebody over to your house that isn't from another country.
Right.
And just having dinner, having more of an open door. We live such insular, like drive in, close, and
right.
I never even, I don't even know who my neighbor is. Right. Instead of like, and meaning it. 100%. Not just being like
100%. I agree. Liberty Mom says, realize that there are regular people and families just like you in every country, and we're all trying to do the same, have a meaningful job, take care of their family, etc. Liberty Mom, I 100% agree with that, and that has been my experience. No matter how different our cultures are, I have made friends across the globe who are just like me. Like they get up in the morning and work hard to try to, provide for their kids, and they want a peaceful future, for their kids. That's awesome. She also said, it seems like when your goals to help others, see, I'm reading this wrong. It seems like when your goal is to help others that need it, God blesses you in ways you would have never thought.
For sure.
Amen.
Yeah. And what you were saying earlier about people around the world, I think, and that this is to that Mark Twain quote again, to cut across ideologies. And I'm not at all anti-religion, but the ways that religion can divide us, just recognize that most people just want to get up and love their family and live a good life and have a good meal and be safe.
Muslim, Christian,
they want to just have a good day.
It's not to say that there aren't places where things rub against each other really hard, but we're just talking about if I go over, and meet this guy living in India or wherever, like I'm probably going to get on with it just fine, and we're going to be friends again. That's been my experience.
Yeah,
I've always made friends wherever I travel. Let me ask you. We've talked about Mexico. We've talked about the youth group and this kind of thing, and there is a real need for helping people. So I've supported my church has supported this mission to Mexico, and it's in northern in the United States. We give them supplies, money, and they'll buy supplies. They'll take it across the border to villages like we were talking about, and do vacation Bible school, teach kids about the gospel, the law, and the gospel, and give them just supplies that they would already have: toothbrushes, pencils, any kind of just for your everyday, but also sharing the gospel with them. And along the way, there's times where they say we have to stop what we're doing because there's drug cartels in this area, and there's been, it's very, very dangerous. I mean, like life and death.
Mm-hmm.
So there, it's not just on TV. It's not just in the news. Like, that never happens. Like it is real life in some places, and there is a need that these people have, and we both can be blessed. The people they are receiving, the people us giving, and like you said, like we are also receiving, and they are also giving in a way. So
yeah,
that's great. Let me ask you about Africa. All right, let's shift continents. We talked about Mexico a little bit.
Well, it's not a bad segue when we talk about risk and
absolutely,
and ideology.
Absolutely. So you've had experiences in Northeast Africa, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and for
the Horn. I've traveled to Morocco. That was back in '99. To Ethiopia and to Somalia.
Okay. And for the safety of certain people, we're not going to go into too much detail about some of that because it is a real threat.
Yeah.
But talk about Africa a little bit. What the missions have been. We've been there at least twice to the Horn,
mm-hmm.
and the first time was kind of like helping scope out, I think, and the second time was something different. But what was your experience like? I've been to South Africa, which is quite different,
right?
But there are some similarities. We can talk about that. But tell me about Northeast Africa, the Horn.
Well, trying to think of how to start.
Where do you dive in? Okay. How what were your expectations? What did you actually find? Let me ask you to start there. And you had been before. So.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hopefully not too cringe embarrassing to say. Like, I mean, this is definitely true, and we can cringe our teeth out, but it's the reality. Being a 15-year-old and loving MacGyver, and I loved Indiana Jones, and to me, that's a lot of where my head was at, and I did want an adventure.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to an adult, I mean, I still wanted that adventure, but I do try to do my homework as much as possible, knowing I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb, and trying my best to not stick out like a sore thumb. Whether it's language, whether it's a dress. I mean, one trip I changed my hair color because I didn't want to stick out too much. So, when you asked what were your expectations, how was it different? Having been to Morocco, East Africa is quite different, but not that different. So it didn't shock me. I mean, I kind of knew I was going to be in a desert country. It didn't disappoint. Yeah, some of this I have to really. David knows me long enough. Like my mouth can run, and I have to really pause. I have to think about it for the sake of people on the ground. But that was a big chunk of it going in the very first time was these kind of waves back and forth of because like when we were where we were, we knew that we were at the time like 40 white faces in the nation. You know, so of course
You're going to stick out.
We're going to stick out.
You can't color your hair and hide it. Yeah.
Right. And so we would go through waves of sort of feeling very comfortable and then needing to be reminded, like, hey, you're being too comfortable.
Yeah.
Or feeling very drummed up and having to pray and get some perspective and calm down. And then there were times when God really, I mean, you can explain it any which way. You won't use the word coincidence, but I feel very powerfully that God intervened at times.
Tell us specifically about those times, if you can.
Sure. So going in to one location, there was somebody that lived there, and they had been kind of MIA for a while. People that should have been in touch with him, like they didn't know where he was, and they were afraid he'd been arrested.
And this is a Christian.
This is a Christian, local, and
in a Muslim country,
right? And so, and if you by the books, nobody's arrested for being a Christian, so they always find some other reason to arrest. Sure, but that's the reason.
Yeah.
And guy had loaned this guy his car, and he saw his car parked, but no guy for a long time. So that was a concern going in, and we didn't know which way that would play. Like there was talk of Judas, like in the conversation of like betrayals happen.
Yeah.
And so this gets very live and very real in a way that's not gonna sing a song at Sunday school.
Right.
Yeah. And
you don't know
who
you can trust.
Yeah, there were three of us going on this trip, and like we couldn't sleep, and we got up and we're talking, praying, and we decided to kind of shoot some video and talk about it. To give you an idea, I had written a letter to my family and trusted it with somebody. I'm like, if I don't come back, give this to my wife. Yeah, well, that's the kind of framework. Thankfully, I had to delete that email or that that message, but that was kind of where we were at the eve of going in. And after we'd been there, I can't remember now. I'd have to look back at documentation to remember how long we'd been there. It wasn't very long. We were at a hotel, and that had Westerners at it. And the owner of the hotel, this is where I feel like advocated for, like that God intervened. He wanted to give us a tour of the grounds because it has this nice courtyard and stuff. And so he's showing us around and he's showing us things he's planted, so on and so forth. And he gets us to a certain place and says, like, those guys over there are good guys. Like, you need to be careful. And so then we went back and sat down and talked at this table. And we had a guy, a rep that is from the had a long time. So it wasn't like we were just on our own to the wind. So we were sitting there talking, and as we're talking, the MIA guy walks up to us.
This is the guy you were Judas, or if he was arrested.
Right, and we're not in a small, we're not in a little town.
Yeah.
Like he had to find us, and he found us. Now, to say Westerners, like there's only certain hotels we would be at.
40 white faces. Yeah.
Right, but here this guy walks up Like, I've never seen him before in my life. I didn't know him. And I mean, quite quickly, there you travel certain places and you do feel like, oh, this like the biblical times is not a stretch. It's easy for my imagination to bridge that gap. Like, that was 3 millennia ago, but it doesn't feel so distant here.
Sure. Yeah.
When I'm looking around, there's camels and there's little narrow streets and marketplaces and wells and like
it's a lot closer to what it was like. Yeah, for sure.
But this felt like I was like, this is Acts of the Apostles reality stepping off the page.
Yeah.
The guy walked up to us. He had been in prison for a while. He looked quite mistreated.
Wow.
And he had just been released. And now you're like, was he released so that he would come to us?
Yeah.
But at that table, I felt like a fate, to be honest. I felt like I do not, I think of Isaiah and Isaiah 6, like, I'm a man of unclean lips among a people of unclean lips. Woe is me. Like, or Peter in the boat, like, I'm a sinful man, go away from me, Lord. Like I thought, why am I on this trip? I do not deserve to be at this table. Like, this guy just got released from prison for being a Christian.
Right.
I'm not that kind of Christian, am I? I don't know. I'd like to think I am.
Yeah.
I'm on this trip because I think I am, but this guy is the real deal, So yeah, I mean, and he was concerned for his own safety, such that, like, he said, the call to prayer came, and there was a little sort of prayer cove in this courtyard, and he's like, I have to go. Basically, I'm going to go pray to Jesus, but I got to go pray, or they're gonna think I'm not a Muslim. They're gonna. I'm exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. But talk about just
well, you think about
powerful.
I mean, Paul makes, you talk about Isaiah, Paul makes statements similar, almost like, I'm not worthy to be doing this, and we're jars of clay carrying this amazing message. I mean, it is in the unworthy that God works through. So, but that is that had to be incredible.
Well, and I think about there's this guy, he's gone now, Mike Yaconelli. He would say, my spirituality doesn't look like your spirituality, and the trouble is, you're always comparing what you know about yourself to what you don't know about everybody else.
Yeah.
So you have to be fair to yourself about that, and that's Christ's work, not mine. But but it was palpable. I mean, that was just one of those very present, where spirituality is. That's another conversation too. But I think we have these false dichotomies all over the place, and one of them is just, spiritual is like this thin, ethereal, immaterial thing.
Yeah.
Rather than that guy's body was in prison.
Yeah.
His spirituality was a very real, physical thing. Paul says, present your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable spiritual service. Your spiritual service is bodily.
Yeah.
Christ was incarnated.
Yeah.
So we can get it. I think we just make these dichotomies that don't need to be.
All right.
You got to, whatever you do, you got to do it in this body, including your worship. Your
well,
service.
let me ask you this: what is the need in the Horn of Africa? I know you can't get specific to protect certain people, but what kind of work is being done there? Are there many ways for people to support, or is it just kind of specific avenues that are?
Well, in the Horn, it's difficult. I think neighboring. Speaking of Somalia in particular, it's very difficult. Not as much in Ethiopia. You have the Ethiopian church there, and there it goes.
Can turn on the camera again?
You can watch me drink my bottle of water.
I think I turned it off. There we go.
I don't know that I'm the best to answer that honestly in terms of like what can be done, but I'll say
for your
or the person that you're that you were supporting.
Sure. What you have in those realities is people on the ground trying to reach others. Yeah,
I'm not starting a church. It's more just with my interactions with people, I'm going to try to be Christ.
And it depends on your definition of church. But what I want to, again, I want to very much respect people's safety, but I'm going to back up the conversation to that guy that was released that sat and talked with us. And what was really encouraging was you look at the stats. You know, I don't know if it's not the U.S. Census, but whoever does those demographic studies. Somalia is 99.9% Muslim. You know, there's a saying, to be Somali is to be Muslim. And I'm not going to quote to you numbers right now, but there was an idea of how many Christians there were on the ground, and it's a lot more. It's a lot more. That was really encouraging to hear, now from the horse's mouth, so to speak. There's more Christians than they can't out themselves. It was literally and I remember on the trip over, I asked one of the guys who was, intended for ministry there, because this was an evangelical group, and I'm now Catholic, but I said, I can look back now and know that the wheels were already turning for me, but to say, if you're here and then there's somebody up the street doing Catholic ministries, are you cooperating or are you having a turf war? And he said, that's a good question. I don't remember that he actually directly answered me, but to me, I don't care if you're Baptist, Methodist, Mennonite, Catholic. They aren't going to ask which brand of Christ do you follow. They're going to say, are you Muslim or not? Right. And so it can mean death, but it will mean consequence.
Yeah. It could be your job. It could be your marriage. So you might not be put to death, but you might not have a job anymore. You might not have a husband anymore.
According to them, you guys are on the same side, right? You're talking about the different denominations of Christianity.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're asking them to claim Christ, then you should be cooperating.
Yeah.
In a country that's 99.9% Muslim, I don't care what brand you are.
Let me ask you this:
it's like, do you have shoes or do you not have shoes? I don't care if they're Nikes or Adidas.
Right. You shared with me that there was an instance where people were. It could have got a lot dicier, right? I mean, people stopped you in a vehicle.
You
want to share?
That was it's just an incident. I mean, there's nothing really remarkable about it except the extremity of.
Yeah, most people have not had that extremity.
Sure. So it was time to go. Time to leave the country, and we were, you have to go through the embassy. Well, I guess we don't have to keep this. We were in Somalia and we were heading back to Ethiopia. That's where we flew out of. So you have to stop at the Ethiopian embassy in Somalia, to head back into their country. And our local driver did not know that, I guess, about 2 weeks prior, there had been a bombing attempt at the embassy, and the entrance had been changed. So he drove us to the wrong entrance.
Oh boy!
And we pulled in, and 3 or 4 guys with, AK-47s jumped up and started pointing them at our vehicle and walking very quickly up to our vehicle. So that probably, and then here I am. I don't speak Somali or Arabic or any language that would be Amharic or any of those languages. So he rolls down his window, and this guy's like 20 years old, our driver, and he is yelling. Now, if you know much about Somali culture, they yell at each other about almost anything. You can have 2 guys that are friends at a cafe, and they're going to say, "Who's the actor that played George on Seinfeld?" And they're in each other's faces, yelling and waving their hands about, and then they'll sit back down and have their tea. But this kid, he's 20, and they've got yelling at them. I'm like, I would be so different right now. I would be like, I'm sorry, what's going on? A very calm and apologetic kid is like yelling at them. And it was our driver. One other guy. I was like
seated in the back in the middle, like just watching all this play out. And I want to say it probably, that kind of hostility and aggression didn't last more than, it was probably around 30 seconds. But I'll tell you, it felt a lot longer than that.
Sure, yeah.
It just felt like time stopped, you know.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So, and then when we went into the embassy, they were giving us a hard time too. A friend there did speak the local language, and they they didn't like it that he could understand them and talk. And we were made to just, I mean, just you could paint the picture, it'd be the wrong idea. Like we were made to sit on the ground aside, but it's not like there were nice, comfy seats for us to sit in. That's just the way it was. But
well, let me share this. So you shared a little bit of kind of your dangerous experiences in the Horn of Africa.
Yeah.
I'll share about my experience in South Africa, which is quite a different world. When I was there, I honestly did not do a whole lot of research on the crime and the danger there. My brother kind of dug into this. We knew it was dangerous. He was digging into a little bit, but we looked at like the numbers when we got back, and we were just astounded. Because in the United States, Chicago is like a super dangerous city, like the murders and all this kind of stuff. And I think Chicago has maybe like 600 murders a year. That's like a high year for them. Okay. We were in Joburg or Johannesburg, and then also Cape Town. Johannesburg, I think, had like 2,500 murders a year. And I mean, it's a big city, but Chicago, is a big city.
Right.
2,500, you're talking more than 4 times. And in Cape Town, I think it was over 3,000 murders a year. And we were with these guys. They were Afrikaans. They were from Dutch descent. They were white, and they were basically like, so where are you gents headed, after this? And we're like, oh, we're going to fly to Cape Town, and we're going to rent a car, and we're going to go to here. We tell where our hotel was and everything. And the guy was just like, and this is a lifelong South African. He was like, gents, please do not rent a car. Do not drive yourself. If you don't get on the right road to go where you're going, you might end up dead. If you get off at the wrong exit, you might end up dead. He's like, you cannot trust Google Maps. It does not know what's safe for you and what is not. He was like, you need to hire a driver and use him all week long and just trust him to take you where it's going to be safe or not. We didn't do that. Well, I pulled up Google Maps. I pulled up Google. We already had like a car lined up. I was like, we're going to do this. We pulled up Google Maps and I showed him. I'm an American. I know what I'm doing.
Same kind of idea, like when I went to Wiki Travel, to get tips about what to take to Somalia or not, and it just came up red. This is a war zone. Don't go there.
But what I want to say, I don't want to like freak people out. It was kind of scary him telling us that. And my brother and I were like, do we really want to do this? And we're like, okay, we showed him the map. This is where we're going to go. He's like, if you just drive there, you should be okay. All right. So we did that. But as we're driving, we saw like if we got off at here, there's not a place to turn around, and we don't belong in that place. Like how are they going to react to us? And over 3,000 murders a year is probably not going to be great.
I don't want to.
They're at least going to take the car, maybe, or do something to us. I don't know. But I got to say this: all of the statistics aside, all of the warnings aside, every single person that we met was, and granted, it was in like a hospitality situation, a restaurant, or a tour group, or whatever. But they were all great people, and we would talk to them and hear about their life and what like. What do you recommend and what do you like? And we really enjoyed every person that we met. Now there could be some naivete to that.
Right.
Like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we talked about that previously of even it's not like the person who wants to take advantage of you is going to appear like a big bad villain.
Hi, I'm a bad guy.
Right,
Let me take advantage of you.
So I just think there's such a balancing act to be struck there of perspective. And it really gets to, my perspective is informed by my faith, so
I mean, I can't speak in generalities when it comes to that. What my view of everything doesn't apply to everybody.
Right.
But like I just heard, if anybody out there is familiar with the recently late Tim Keller, great Presbyterian minister in New York City, just heard a video of him today talking about the resurrection, which coming up to Easter, and he just said his wife Kathy and he were talking. He's passed away of cancer, but he said, and this was in that was the framework of his own cancer. But he said, he said, Kathy and I were talking, and if the resurrection really happened, if Jesus bodily got up and walked out of that tomb, then everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. Everything, talks about him.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life, it's all going to work out. It's all going to be okay. And so that's, I decide by faith to let my life be shaped by that. Yeah. Why do I bring all that up? When you talk about these risks and this fear, to say there's a balance to be struck, I can always have this balance slide to the no fear side, because you could try to strike that balance and always fall to the other side of slight paranoia.
Right.
Of this guy's being seems to be nice to me, but what if he's not
right?
I would rather assume goodwill and pay for it.
Yeah.
Than be paranoid and miss out on everything, on everybody.
I'm very much
but this person's showing me goodwill. I don't want to second guess that.
Right. I'm going to take you at what face value.
Yeah.
And if
you kill
it's on you. That's right. It's on you, bro. It's not me.
You want to meet Jesus?
I'm the same.
It was cut short by you.
Your Tim Keller quote reminded me of N.T. Wright, Anglican, who you introduced me to. But he said he was in the cab in London and talking.
Yeah. Thank you. I forgot about that.
Talking to the cabbie, and the cabbie said, "It's like I've always said." He had a Geordie accent. If Easter is real, then the rest is rock and roll. It's sometimes it's hard to live life that way, but that is the reality.
Yeah.
And how timely for a Holy Week.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about with Africa or your travels or?
Jane, that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
I just think speaking of events, he wrote a book called Surprised by Hope, and I just think I just wrote it down today. What was the second one? Well, I'll give the one that I can think of. But if I had anything to share, one of my pastors years ago asked me if you had anything to share with our church, what it would be. Just one thing, and I would say resurrection. Which, if you really take that on board, what you're left with is hope, a living hope.
Yeah.
Not, I hope this happens tomorrow, but a sure, certain hope.
Certain.
I mean, another philosophy guy asked me, well, what is our hope? And I had to say, not just Christ, the body of Christ. There's a man in heaven.
Right.
Bodily.
The resurrection.
The resurrection is my living. To say the resurrection of the body of Christ. I have a bodily, material, objective, personal hope, not just pie in the sky. And to live out of that. I know your bigger conversation is about travel, but that allows me to travel with a certain disposition.
Absolutely. And just to kind of bring it home, there is a need everywhere. There's a need. I told you earlier, when I was a kid, we were great friends with a Korean family. They were missionaries to the United States. There's a need here.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's a need there. There's a need everywhere. Okay. So whether it's the youth group, little brats, and they're not all brats, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The kid that really doesn't have much perspective and is spoiled. There's a need for them. There's a need for the people down there to minister to them. There's a need in Africa. There's a need everywhere. And we all kind of need to have an egocentrism where we think this is the way life is done. Right. This is the best way.
Right.
You need to put that on a shelf when you go on vacation or if you're going on a mission trip or something like that, and just be like you started off by
The one in
saying,
Rome, right?
yeah, don't have your expectations. Try to set those aside. It's hard to, but just understand things are not going to go your way the way that you're expecting to all the time.
Right.
And you're going to be uncomfortable a lot of the time. And if you can be prepared for that, you're going to be in a lot better place, whether you're traveling for leisure or for mission. And there's so many good people. Yeah, there are dangerous places. There are bad guys out there. There's bad guys here. There's a bad guy in here, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the line between good and evil is right at the heart of every man. Right. You've got a bad guy in you. I am a bad man. But there are those. I've made friends all over the world, and you can too. It's just a matter of they do life differently, and and that's not a bad thing.
You made me think earlier in our conversation with that idea of like sending the youth group down. No matter where you grew up, no matter where, if you're human, you're ethnocentric.
Right.
You think the way we do it in my town is the way to do it.
Right.
Grandma butters the bread the right way.
Right.
Maybe they don't even use butter. So if you can't let go of that idea that like not only does this shock my expectations, stretch my boundaries, so often the default is, and they're doing it wrong.
Right.
Why don't they do it like this?
Right.
They need to learn down here the way to.
If only they could come here. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
just let that go.
Yeah.
And learn and enjoy what's going on right where you're at.
Yeah. And in Africa and in Mexico, we talked a little bit earlier about the big living close to the land, like being more connected to it. That is a reality. And we laugh about like the snowflake kids these days in the United States. Like we are snowflakes really when you compare us to those people. Like if you can go there and just see like life can be more gritty and less cushy, and it can still be good life.
Now you're reminding me of our previous conversation, and I would say that is one thing that I love about all of these places.
Yeah.
Is, I'm gonna describe it, frame it the best way I know how, but so much when we talk about the creature comforts, air conditioning, electricity, insulation, all of this, the internet, all of these things are artificial. I'm not saying they're bad.
Yeah, right.
Not,
but
they're an imposition on nature.
Right.
And you can say, well, we're part of nature. Yeah, but technology, by all the philosophy that's preceded us, we're talking about something that distinguishes us from animals and is an imposition on the world. And again, that word imposition can sound bad. I'm not trying to make negative connotations. I'm just saying, like all those sort of post-apocalyptic movies, in the end, nature wins. George Carlin had a great bit about this. The Earth will be just fine. Humanity, maybe not so much. But this globe we're floating on, there may be some new species or whatever. It'll be just struggling. So it's all in the position when you get to these developing places, you're just getting closer to nature, and I like that. And to our earlier point of the ethnocentrism, and so I feel quite confident, no matter what kind of teenagers you take with you, and how much they receive or they're a pain in the butt, you are gifting to that people this same chance to stretch out of their own ethnocentrism. Right. To say, well, maybe you don't like those kids, but they did it differently, and it was a chance to gain perspective on yourself and others in the world.
Yeah. And I guess I'd say all of the perspective that I've gained from my travels, it hasn't like ruined life for me here. I still appreciate what I have, but it's just like broadened it. Like, life is good there too. And there's things that I love and yearn for that are different there. Like, it's almost just like broadening the possibility of enjoyment. Like, I would love to be back in Florence or Japan or South Africa experiencing this thing that they've only got there. So.
And you reminded me, I was just talking to a friend, Ruben, who grew up in Mexico, and I was trying to get at this idea and of that closer to the earth kind of thing. And another thing I would have to say is, you talked about Korean people coming over as missionaries. We're in a post-Christian culture, so we have those Christian roots, and even for our values, people who want nothing to do with any kind of religion want to hold on to the ethics and morals that religion gave them, as if they're given, they're granted, and they're not
standalone.
But what that closer to the earth kind of reality, I think, what shows itself in travel too, and I don't think it's sort of impossible for me to measure, but I don't think this is just by contrast that I'm used to America, and then by contrast, I think in and of themselves, by their own virtue, they have more culture.
Yeah,
I think what we have in America, talk about artificiality growing up as an imposition. We have Amazon. We can get that. We can get that vanilla to our door.
Yeah,
but
we have consumerism.
Yeah.
We have we have entertainment and media, and you have restaurants, clothes. You want to watch a movie on Netflix or go to the theater, video games. We have entertainment and markets, consumerism. What we don't have, what is American culture now? I'm not trying to diss on America. I do think that there's something very real. And some of
this on America. I mean, there are things we need to improve on.
Well, that's not my point. Is to try to tease out this reality that I think I'm recognizing is that some of the great stuff we have that is like, I like my air conditioning and so on.
Yeah.
That perhaps it's kind of like when you think of somebody who's uber rich. We're talking about Amazon. When you're talking about the Musks and the Bezos and stuff like this, people that. And you don't have to get that rich to be in a place where you can say your creature comforts were taken care of a long time ago.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to say it's a point of morality that you're like you shouldn't be able to grow your wealth anymore. You're done.
Yeah.
I'm not making that argument, but I think by analogy, America, our creature comforts were taken care of a long time. So now, what are we doing?
Right.
And I think an unplanned consequence of how connected we are and how much we can get that vanilla up here today is we don't have as much. You can't. It's a human thing. You go to this town and it will have its own microculture, but we don't have this is the dance from my region. This is that's. It's harder to come by in America when it's right there in front of you. Now, some of it is right there in front of me by contrast. I'll admit to that. But I do think some of it is just more there. Yeah. They still have, it wasn't until I heard a song lyric last Easter in Spanish that I made the connection. Like pueblo means town, right? But it means people, like public. Pueblo, a town doesn't mean just a town. It means a people. We don't have that so much anymore. In America, it's hard. We drive into our garages and close the door,
right?
So how are you going to have
a little phone?
Yeah, how are you going to have a people and a culture, a shared way of doing things,
right? Especially when we've tried to. I mean, we're going to.
The shared way of doing things is the consumerism. Right. They expect this to be like this plastic thing here.
Yeah,
isn't that a culture?
And we try to divorce ourselves from a religion, from all these things, and it can be whatever you want. And then doing that, culture, you're cultivating your values for the next generation. And when you say there are no values, there is no truth, there's nothing, you don't have culture.
Right. I mean, that gets to, there's all sorts of ideas. I mean, I think about the individual. The individual is a great place to ground. I want it to be the legal unit. I want to be responsible for my own crimes and not everybody else's, and vice versa. But when it comes to society and culture, the family and more is, the unit doesn't break down to the individual because consumerism does.
Yeah.
Buy this thing to make you happy. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to go off on a rant, but it doesn't work if we're not somewhat dissatisfied. Bored? Watch this. Right. Hungry? Eat this.
Right.
Market. I mean, markets have to work. I'm not trying to, but could we buy the things that we need and the things that might even make us happy without thinking we need them?
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to be happy if I don't have the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And okay. So to wrap up.
Not good at wrapping up. No. We had a nice little. I didn't balloon that, and then I opened it back up.
This is every conversation I've ever had with my dear friend Cody Wood. We could talk all night in a day.
Yeah.
And not
Gears. It's time to go. Then we're standing at the door
Right.
for another
for
hour.
another hour. I love talking with you. But I think what I was going to try to say is just to wrap it up is that I think I did lose my train of thought. But just, yeah. What was the last thing you said?
Talking about can we be satisfied, basically?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is that like sending that teenager to Mexico? You know, like sometimes they need that, and to realize I could be satisfied without all these cushy creature comforts that I think I have to have. And mom, I need the latest iPhone. You know, like you don't need. You know, like we need it. We need God.
You got past need a long time ago.
Right. We need God. Right. And we should love each other. We need each other. Right. Okay. That's love the Lord your God.
That's right.
Love your neighbor as yourself. Right. And there is a need here, a need all over. We can learn here. We can learn all over. And I don't know what else to say.
Well, when I think of travel, in particular, you know, you keep reading the same book over and over, like, you know, watching the same movie, whatever. Like, travel is the chance to read another book. Different. You know,
a lot broaden your perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Cody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will do this again.
Yeah.
It's always great fun with you. All right. Liberty Mom, you're the sole questioner tonight. I appreciate it, but I see there's quite a few other people tuning in.
I realized our studio lost its daylight. So,
yes.
like, the whole lighting situation has
I like
changed.
the vibe, though. This is kind of, yeah.
I feel like I'm in a sub, like, right now in Beretta.
Yeah, we need Sir Sean Connery.
Whatever they would say. I don't know.
Hey, everybody, listen, if you enjoyed this, be sure to tune in when we do this again. I've got a thread on my account with all of our previous episodes. I'm going to put this one on there afterwards. You can watch any part of it. And I've got some exciting guests coming up. I don't want to say too much, but I got to say, I'm pretty excited about some of the shows we got coming up. Okay, so stay tuned. God bless you. Have a good night wherever you are. Bye-bye.